Tokyo Rose. Tokyo Rose is a generic name given to who believed to be an English-speaking female broadcaster of Japanese propaganda by the Allied troops in World War II. The broadcast was supposedly to aim to lower the morale of the Allied forces. However, the servicemen would listen to the propaganda to see how their military actions actually affected the Japanese people. Tokyo Rose often read her broadcast in a tongue-in-cheek fashion and even went as far as to tell her listeners to expect her to try to have a subtle attack on the morale. The most famous person associated with the name Tokyo Rose is Iva Tricori, who was born in Los Angeles, California on July 4th, 1916, and was a Japanese American. Her father was a Japanese American, and because of her being caught between two worlds, she wanted to live more like everyday American teenager. And so she went to UCLA to become a doctor and graduated in 1941. But for a graduation gift in 1941, her parents sent her to Japan to visit her grandmother, or her aunt, who had fallen ill that same year. That was also the year that Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, and the tensions rose between the United States and Japan, making it impossible for her to return back to the United States. And because of her being an American citizen, the Japanese secret police visited her at her aunt's house and demanded her to renounce her U.S. citizenship and declare loyalty to the Japanese emperor. She refused, and she became an enemy alien in Japan and was refused a food rations card and had to move into a boarding house. Because of her being denied a food rations card, she needed a job to work to pay for her food and her living. And so she joins an English-speaking newspaper where she just transcribed shortwave radio broadcasts for them. She also got a second job at Radio Tokyo, where at first she helped type out scripts for the different broadcasts that were going on. And soon, the radio unexpectedly asked her to host a show called The 0 Hour, which was an entertainment program for the U.S. soldiers. Because of her feminine American voice, they hoped it would get to them. However, the idea that the radio company had for the broadcast was to demoralize the soldiers, to get them where they wouldn't beat the Japanese and lose. And she was supposed to tell them that their girls back home were seeing other men. However, she never really dispersed much propaganda, though she did call the soldiers boneheads a time or two. And unlike her given nickname of Tokyo Rose, Iva never called herself Tokyo Rose. Instead, she called herself Anne, and later on, Orphan Anne. She worked with this radio personality for over 3 years, where she met a Japanese Puerto Rican man and married him the same year that the U.S. dropped the 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? I think that's how you pronounce it. Thank you. After the World War, several journalists interviewed her, and they made over 17 pages about her radio show and started calling her the one and only Tokyo Rose, which is then when the U.S. Army started to investigate her for treason, saying that because of her broadcasting Japanese propaganda. She was held in jail for 1 year in Japan, but she was released on the lack of evidence. And then Walter Winchell made her story national news in the U.S. and called for her to be brought back over to the U.S. and tried for treason. Being moved by this newscast, President Truman, Gerald Truman, agreed with him and brought her back and had her charged with treason. However, the actual transcripts of her radio show were never shared with the jury, and it was also said that the witnesses were pressured into saying she was guilty because they needed a scapegoat. sentenced to 10 years, and when she was released, she found her family in Chicago and lived there for 20 years as a stateless citizen until 1976, when President Ford wrote her a pardon. She passed away on September 26, 2006, as an undisturbed American citizen.